Yo, hello and welcome back to Stu Know Who. So, on previous episodes that I have done on this channel, I have spoken about mental health before, more specifically men's mental health. Now, I have said previously this is a subject matter that is very close to my heart. I've alluded to the fact that I've had my own issues, my own things I've had to deal with. And I'd also said that on a future episode, I was going to do a bit of a deep dive into what I've been through, the experiences that I've had, and the things that have helped me get through them, the struggles that I still have daily, but how I can continue to strive to be better and things like that. This is that episode tonight. That is what this episode is all going to be about this evening. So before I start, a couple of apologies. The first one is I'm going to be talking about some quite raw, sometimes emotional topics that are going to be quite hard to listen to, going to be quite hard to talk about. So viewer discretion advised, I guess, is what I'm saying. The second thing I want to apologise for is I'm going to spend the best part of the next hour talking about myself, which is not something I'm very comfortable in doing. This episode is not about me, although I am specifically talking about me. The reason I'm making this episode is I have experience, and hopefully by sharing my experience and things that I've learned, things that I've seen, my hope, my intention is that someone can watch this and it could potentially help just to get someone through those dark days. So with all that being said, let's get into tonight's episode. So, being someone who has, I have had some serious, significant issues with regards to my mental health. I speak to a lot of people who have had similar issues, even if it's different circumstances, maybe different diagnoses, whatever it is. People who've had their own issues. And one question that to this day is still in my mind is whether, when it comes to mental health issues, is the question of nature versus nurture. It's something I've often wondered about myself, and to be perfectly honest, that question still remains because I am not sure of the answer. If I had to hazard a guess, again, only for me, but I think speaking to other people as well, it's a mixture. It's a bit of both. Now, the reason this question really comes into my head a lot is I've tried to look back at and pinpoint times in my life when I've noticed, and it is difficult looking back through your memory because memories fade, memories change. I get all of that stuff. But I look back at my life trying to pinpoint when did my issues start. Now, as a child, as far back as I can remember, I had a very happy childhood. I had two parents who we never had. I was going to say we never had a lot of money. That's an exaggeration. We never had any money. There were times where, I knew I was poorer than other kids. I also knew I was better off than some kids as well. So this isn't a poor me thing, because one thing I never wanted for as a child was love and attention. I had parents who would give me their last penny. That's kind of how it felt. And I don't, obviously, kids, you can have times when kids are sad, when kids are happy, things happen, you know. To the best of my memory, my childhood was pretty happy. I was a happy kid, popular kid, and yeah, life was good. So that kind of means it's more nature, well, sorry, nurture rather than nature. I don't know. Um, I as I grew older, as I got older, and as I've had conversations and learnt things about my parents, I know now that my parents too had their own issues with mental health, their own struggles, their own ways of dealing with those struggles, which makes me question whether this was always something that was, and this isn't trying to apportion blame or anything, whether this was something that was always going to rear its ugly head within me. I don't know. I do not know. And I hope not, because I hope and pray every day that my children live the happiest and most successful, wonderful life they can ever live, and do not have some of the emotional baggage that I carry around with me. So as I was growing up, I hit teenage years now. If you're a lad watching this, you know, as soon as you hit those teenage years, even before then, puberty is starts rearing its ugly head, and that's a scary place. That is such a huge change for boys and girls. It's a massive change, and you start your emotions mean more, and you start noticing more. You're growing more intelligent, more receptive to what's going on in the world, and it's. I'm not looking forward to my three daughters when it starts with them, puberty and all that stuff. I'm thinking of I'm building a shed at the bottom of the garden, which I'm going to go and live in for 10 years. I'll come up, I'll say hello to them, give them a kiss goodnight, but I don't want to be around that. It's a weird time. But even when I first hit my teenage years, okay, I would get in the occasional scrap because that's what lads do. Get in trouble from time to time because, again, that's what young lads do. But I don't remember life being too bad at all. Now, I got to the age of, I think I was 13 or 14, and I found out that my granddad, who lived 250 miles away, but every time I saw him, spoke to him on the phone, we would go up, visit him, him and my nana would come down see us. I had a very special bond with my granddad. He was he hated football, but would buy me football stuff because he knew I loved it. We we just got on really well. And he was someone I admired. I knew he was one of the youngest sergeants ever in the UK Army. He then went on to drive trucks. He'd tell me all his stories. He used to do this little trick where he had this pretend dog that would bark under the table while he was sat there. I knew it was him making the noises, but it's hilarious. He was just a very good guy, great guy. Now, I found out he had cancer, which I was at an age where I knew the word cancer and I associated that with death. a lot of people who have cancer, it's horrific, but people can get treatment and people can get better, improve. And my granddad, by the time they found it, it was terminal. And I was at an age where, like I said, I was more aware of emotions, more susceptible to emotions, and more aware of what was going on in the wider world. And that, I can remember by the end, it was just one more day. Just one more day. Just give me one more day. And that's kind of the thought process you have. Because he meant the world to me. Now, around the time we found out that my granddad was going to die, my mum and dad were at each other's throats. I mean that metaphorically, mostly. Although there were times when actually, literally at each other's throats. And it's only then when you remember things that happened when you were 9 or 10, when arguments would happen in the middle of the night and you didn't really, you'd hide your head under the blanket and try not to pay attention to it. I remember it was 2 or 3 times in the middle of the night, I can tell you, when being woken up by my dad. Actually, that's a lie. Pretending to be asleep and being woken up by my dad saying, I'm off, you coming with me or you staying with her. That was before my teenage years. Obviously, memories change, memories, but they are memories that are in my head. I'm not trying to apportion blame, I'm just saying there were arguments, and that these arguments become more and more frequent, more and more, at times, physical. It got to the point where I could probably go for a month without hearing my mum and my dad actually say a word to each other. It's like they had their own language. It was sign language and grunts, you know. And this was going on at the same time where we knew what was happening with my granddad as well. It was tough, you know, and young lad, I'm taking this all to my heart. And then we got the phone call that my granddad had passed away. It was at home, and it was a heart attack that took his life. It was the heart attack that ended his life. It was the cancer that killed him. You know, the heart attack was brought on by the cancer. And I was just turned 15. And it devastated me. Absolutely devastated me. It was the first time I'd known people die before. You know, the one thing guaranteed in life is death, and that's hard to look at, but it's true. But it's the first time I'd actually experienced death to someone close to me, someone who I looked up to so much. And it broke me, and it broke me, and it broke my dad, because it was his dad, you know. It was with the tension and the arguments and everything that was going on at home as well. This was the cherry on top of a very bad fucking cake. I'm trying to process those thoughts that are going on when I was nearly 2 years older than my sister who lived with us. I was old enough to know that my mum and dad were splitting up because it was obvious. And whilst all that was going on, my granddad died. Now, I've got an article here on the NHS which I want to bring up, specifically about bereavement and young people. This was something that, it was kind of, yes, it's sad, deal with it. You know, it wasn't that callous and that cold, but that's how it, when you're going through it, that's how it feels. Yes, you're sad, deal with it. So, to read the article, losing someone important to you is one of the hardest things to experience in life. If you're young, bereavement can be even more difficult. Your teenage years can be a lot of fun, but they're also often an emotional time. If someone close to you dies, it can be incredibly hard, which is what happened to me. Your world may feel as though it's crashed down around you. It certainly did for me. And there were, as I already said, there were other things going on as well. The cherry on top of a bad fucking cake. It broke me. It says it can make you feel very alone, especially as a young person, because you might find that none of your friends have gone through anything similar and won't understand or know what to say. So your emotions after bereavement, grieving is a natural part of recovering from bereavement, and everyone's experience of grief is different. There's no rules about how we should feel, and importantly, how long for. But many people find that they feel a mixture of the following: sadness. Well, no doy. You've lost someone, that's obvious, you know. Shock. Do you know, although we were all expecting my granddad to die, I actually spoke with him earlier in the day when he died. And you know, that phone call was about, he was after me dad on the phone because he couldn't get a TV signal. It's such a benign phone call that you're not thinking the last time you're going to speak to your granddad is about a TV signal. And this is, you know, a couple of decades ago, and I can remember thinking the last time I spoke to my granddad was about. So I was in shock. Says you may feel relief if the death followed a long period of illness. No, I was selfish. I wanted my granddad to fight on through what he was going through. There was no relief. Guilt and regret. I felt very guilty because if I'd known that that phone call was the last time I was going to speak with him, I would have said bollocks to your bloody TV aerial and just let him know exactly how much he meant to me. Anger. With everything that was going on at home at the time, I was already noticing an angry side of me that was at times uncontrollable. And this did exacerbate that. Anxiety, I'll be honest, I had no idea what anxiety was. No idea. Despair and helplessness, which is to me the same as sadness, just to an extreme level. And yes, I did. And depression, same. It says these feelings may be very intense, particularly in the early days and weeks. Time eventually helps these intense emotions subside. So I'll bring that up just to show that it does affect young people. And I think sometimes we're all guilty of, you don't understand, you're a child. I think children feel the pain more sometimes, perhaps because they don't understand. And to go back to that one of relief, when I argued with that and said, no, there was no relief for me. I wanted my granddad, even though he was going through pain, to continue through that pain. Because as a young person, we are all, although you start becoming more aware of your emotions, you are aware of your emotions, especially through your teenage years. I think you are more self-centered, blinkers are on, and you focus more on your changes, your emotions, and things like that. However, kids do pick up on the subtle things, the things that are going on, and kids know more than adults give them credit for. And sometimes I'll catch myself saying something to my kids like, you don't need to know this, you're a child, and then think, yeah, I got told that as a kid and it stuck with me. And then I'll have a conversation because I'm like, no, that doesn't slide. Let's have a chat. His funeral, I just remember being in absolute pieces, and it was a pain that I still carry with me to this day. That guilt I still carry with me to this day. The fact that I can remember that phone call and just think, why the fuck was I talking to him about a TV aerial, TV signal? Why did that matter? On the other side, I got to speak with him on the last day that he was here. But then I feel guilty about that other people didn't. He actually didn't ring to speak to me. He rang to speak to my dad. My dad was out of work. The level of guilt is... I don't think it matters what age you are. Losing someone you care about is devastating. And there's never a right age to lose someone. Now, within a couple of months of me losing my granddad, we were at home as a family, or at least from the outside looking in, as a family. And as I said, I was 15 years old, and I knew things weren't right between my parents. I knew there'd been very vocal arguments, accusations of physical confrontations. I was old enough to know I had one or two friends whose parents had split up. Tended to be when they were a lot younger. I didn't know anyone my kind of age whose parents were going through a bad split up, and you're embarrassed. That's just one thing I remember feeling like, why are my mum and dad not happy with each other? Why does one of my parents sit downstairs, the other one sit upstairs, and they won't say two words to each other? And when they do talk, it's not a conversation, it's an argument. To the point where you didn't want people coming around to your house because you're like, if they come around, just please act like you're happy. You know what I mean? A couple months after my granddad died, my mum was sat upstairs. She'd asked myself, my sister, to go upstairs for a little chat. And you know, I was. It's amazing what you remember. You know, things like this stick in your head. I remember going up and she's on the bed with a bag, red eyes. You could see she'd been crying, and I knew what this was. And it was my mum telling me that just for now she was moving out. They need time apart. they still love us and all those things. It's not permanent. I don't know how my sister felt, but for me this was something I'd been waiting for probably 2 years. I knew it was on the cards and I knew it was permanent. And this was not long after my granddad had died. It was, unfortunately, there is no good time, shall I say, for these things to happen. It is just what it is. Now, again, I've got an article here which is on psychred.org, and it's the long-term effects of divorce on teenage sons. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't have an effect on girls. Of course it does, but I never have been and never was a girl, so I can only speak on myself. Now, the things it highlights is an increased risk of depression, low academic performance, risk of substance abuse, difficulties in relationships, behavioural problems, feeling of abandonment and isolation, difficulty expressing emotions, and low self-esteem. So, the divorce of parents is a difficult experience for any child, but teenage sons face unique challenges during this transition. Parental separation often leaves teenage boys feeling abandoned, isolated, and betrayed. They struggle with a myriad of emotional, psychological, and behavioural issues that can have long-lasting impacts. Teenage sons of divorced parents are at higher risk for problems like depression. I can tick that box 100%. Substance abuse, without trying to incriminate myself in any way, I can potentially tick that box too. Academic decline. Do you know what? I was always told by my teachers, if I actually put the effort in, I can do whatever because I had the brains, but I couldn't be arsed no more. Relationship difficulties, something which definitely hit me in my 20s. And yes, I will get onto that later in this episode. So, supporting teenage boys for the divorce process and its aftermath is critical to helping them process their feelings, build resilience, and develop into emotionally healthy young men. In some cases, teen counselling can provide a structured environment. This was something that I never went through because I'm a tough lad. I'm not going to talk about my feelings. So, adolescent boys, after divorce of the parents, acutely feel changes in the daily routine and relationships with family members, which can cause them a feeling of insecurity and confusion. Adolescents do not yet have the necessary skills to cope with the emotional upheaval caused by a family breakup. It's worth noting that teenage boys are especially vulnerable to the development of depression after the divorce of their parents. Now, again, to me, depression was feeling sad. My parents have just split up. Of course, I feel sad. If I didn't, I'd be some sort of psychopath or something. You know what I mean? So it was natural to feel sad. There's a difference between feeling sad and it becoming an issue. Now, one thing I did not know back then was this was an issue that was slowly building and built throughout my life. It was something I had no idea. Even if someone had said to me, "You have depression," I'd be like, "Great, what's that mean? Well, where do I go and how do I fix it?" My kind of logical brain is, okay, there's an issue. How do I fix that problem? Boom, get it done. Now, I wish there was some sort of magic pill with depression like that. If there was, if I could copyright that, I would be worth billions right now. You know what I mean? I wish it was that simple. Talking of medication, so the risk of substance abuse increases. Boys who find it difficult to come to terms with the separation of their parents may turn to psychoactive substances as a coping mechanism for difficult emotions, anger, sadness, or loneliness, and a lack of an appropriate parental support system will most likely lead to risky adolescent behavior such as substance abuse. So what I found was I was having issues regarding what I now know as depression. It wasn't sadness, it was more than that. I had a severe lack of interest in, to me, I would go to school, and this was GCSE year at school. So it was quite an important one. I was in detention all the time. Homework wasn't done because one thing I used to say, and it used to get me in trouble with teachers, was, why should I do homework just because you're not good enough to teach me during school hours? That did not fly well with teachers, I tell you. But I started rebelling a bit, would get into trouble, arguments, scraps, fights. I just lost my granddad. My parents had just split up, and you're trying to teach me about Romeo and fucking Juliet or some bollocks. Like I give a fuck, and that was my attitude. I started drinking. Alcohol became a relaxer, a sort of a pain relief, if that makes sense. Once alcohol couldn't do it no more, later in life, it became I had a very fond affection towards a girl called Mary Jane. Let's just say that, so I don't get into any trouble. There was stuff that were technically legal. There was a shop local to me, and that became my next go-to. I dabbled with other things, not heroin or crack or anything like that, but I was on a path where I'd say I just didn't give a shit. I didn't give a shit about consequences. I didn't give a shit about tomorrow. I didn't give a shit about the future. Above anything else, I didn't give a shit about myself. That's how I felt. So after the separation and consequential divorce of my parents, I was living with my dad. My dad, again, if you ask me back then, even though I was going through these issues, I don't know what depression is. I don't know. But I did know that my dad was signed off work for it, was on all sorts of medication, doing counselling, and I didn't know what he was going through, because even though I was going through it, you don't talk. I can look back now and see how much he was struggling, severely struggling, and I was trying to hold him together, if that makes sense. He was signed off work. I'd hear him middle of the night crying and stuff, and 15, 16, 17 years old trying to hold that together, whilst at the same time, inside I'm broken. I had a girlfriend at the time that my parents split up. We were together 2.5 years, something like that. We broke up, and it was I felt a sense of anger around that. Also a sense of everything that I've witnessed going on with my parents is now happening with me, and I was quite a messed up kid on the inside, but on the outside holding it together quite well. People, I was always taking a piss, having a laugh, or if I felt like I was going to break down and cry, it would be easier for me to try and break someone's face. Because if you get into a scrap, there's no way you can be sad. There's no way you can be depressed. I'm not sad. I'm angry. Fight me. If I'm going out and drinking underage or smoking something I shouldn't be, I'm not living reckless. I'm having fun. And this is what my life became. I actually done alright in my GCSEs, even though I turned up to 2 separate GCSE exams, pissed, and passed them as well, which maybe goes to show if I'd taken it serious, if I'd put the effort in, maybe what I could have achieved. I'm just one of those annoying people that seems to stuff sticks in their brain. I come across as a dumbass. I act like a dumbass. But when it comes to exams or remembering stuff just sticks. Even if I am half cut doing the exam. I went on to sixth form. My plan was to get out of school as soon as I could. However, I wanted to get into engineering and I thought doing some A-levels would help me. Except that's when I started smoking certain substances and drinking more and more, and sixth form did not go well. I also had 2 jobs at the time as well, and the way I viewed it, I'm not getting paid for sixth form, I'm getting paid for my jobs. I'd rather get money from the jobs and then go spend it on the drink and the smoke than go to sixth form and sit in a chair. Education is important, but academical studies are not for everyone. And by that stage in my life, they were not for me no more. I couldn't be arsed sitting there, read a book and then tell me what the book says. So I grew up, got into my 20s, ended up moving out, living with a girl who she, let's just say, with the issues that I'd had, potentially drug related, and that this was not a happy marriage in the making, shall we say. We ended up splitting up, and because of the aggro and drama that was caused, I ended up not having a family home to go back to. I ended up homeless. Spent a couple of nights on a park bench, and then a mate of mine, her mum took me in, and she was fantastic, helped me get back on my feet. And but there was a time when I was living at my mate's mum's house where I'd driven to a car park. I needed to be by myself, and I was in the car park in Torquay. It looks over, for those who know Torquay, looks over Thatcher's Rock, down like I think it's the Meadford area, car park high up on the cliff. And I sat there bawling my eyes out, trying to convince myself to drive my car over this cliff. I didn't do it. It was the first time I'd actually come, but the first time where I had thought, I think I'm done with life, because no matter what happens, no matter what I try and do, it just seems to be shit after shit after shit. And by this time it had been 10 years of shit and hurt and heartache and bad decisions by me and bad things happening that are out of my control as well. And now I clearly didn't do it because I'm still here. And then I met my wife. My wife, who is a giant pain in my arse. Because when I want to act reckless, she won't allow me to. When I don't care about myself, she's one of those annoying twats who does care about me. She's my best mate, and is the reason I'm still here. She's someone I can have a laugh with, someone I could confide in, someone who I finally found someone that I wanted to spend my life with. So we got married. It was a great ceremony. It really was. We went on our honeymoon and then she got pregnant. Fantastic. And one thing I was desperate for was to be a dad. I was so desperate to be a dad. My plan was have a son and then raise him to not be like me. Didn't quite work because I ended up having a daughter who is a mini me. She really is. The good bits, not the bad bits. So we were having a daughter, and it's funny, we went to the 20-week scan. I wanted a son, as already said. And they said, congratulations, you're having a girl. And I went, okay, I can do that. I can do that. I'm still buzzing. I've got a child. I now have 3 kids. The second one, I thought, well, I've got a daughter who is incredible. There's 3.5 years between them. I'd like a son because then we got one of each. But if I get another daughter, I'm not fussed. We had another daughter. Then there was a 6-year gap and we said, look, one more, that's it. And I had people saying, I bet you're hoping for a boy. And my answer was, no. I got 2 girls that are incredible. Give me another girl. Because girls seem to be bloody easy. And I have 3 daughters now. I am moving out when they're teenagers. But for now, it's incredible. So, my wife has some quite severe pain conditions, health conditions, things like that. So we knew it wasn't going to be a straightforward pregnancy. We knew it was going to be in and out of hospital and things like that. The day before, couple of days before my daughter actually was born, I was working. I was an installation engineer, and I had a job down in a quarry. I knew there was no phone signal when I was on site in this quarry. You got stone all around you. Said to my wife, look, if you go into labour, you're not going to be able to get hold of me. Ring my boss. He will ring the quarry site manager. He'll come and find me. That was the plan. So I got to this quarry just outside of Plymouth, and I spoke to the guy in the office, explained the situation, and he said, we have no phone lines at the moment because the night before, a drink driver had smashed into the bloody phone lines. There's no way getting old. Like, we cannot ring out. No one can ring in. So I had to drive a couple miles up the road to ring my missus to find out that she's wrong my work. They're trying to get hold of me. She's on her way to hospital. She's in labour. Right, I'm off home. Not home. I'm off to hospital. We got there. We were there. She was in labour for 48.5 hours. So, fun times. They were, there was an issue where they were monitoring my wife and didn't realise just how close she was, and then realised that baby's head was basically crowning. They had to give her a hormone to stop the, not compressions, but to stop the baby being pushed out. And then they couldn't get it started again. So they had my wife and my daughter hooked up to heart monitor machines, and it was just a case of wait and see. Now, early hours of the morning, they come rushing in and rushed us down to theatre because my daughter's heartbeat was almost non-existent. They had to do emergency cesarean on my wife to get my daughter out, and all you can hear is the rushing around. They've got a curtain up so you can't see nothing. And then all the rushing around stopped, all the voices stopped. And there was just a sound of silence, deafening silence. You know, I actually understand what deafening silence means after that night. Probably only lasted a matter of seconds, but it felt like minutes of just silence. And then my daughter let out a cry, and the cry, if you could translate it, was bugger off, I'm sleeping. It really was a sort of a petulant little go away. She was fine, and they put her in my arms, and then my wife started to fit on the bed. Her blood pressure had fell through the floor. She'd lost too much blood, and then I was shoved into the corner with my newborn daughter while they were rushing to save my wife's life. And I remember just sitting there looking at this precious little thing, looking back at me, and then looking up at my wife and just thinking, don't you fucking dare, because I can't do this shit by myself. They did a good job. It took a lot of recovery, but my wife she was okay. Daughter was okay. They had to stay in hospital for a week, but they come home. I finally had something in my life I could be fucking proud of. Something I could look at and say, I did that. My daughter. The problem is, as the days turn to weeks, weeks turn to months, that kind of feeling of self-loathing and things that I've been through, things that I'd brought on myself. The fact that I was clearly a flawed human being, and I've got my daughter who is perfection. I was not good enough for my daughter. I loathed myself probably more than I ever had done. I've helped to create something so perfect, and yet I hated myself then more than ever. I convinced myself that my daughter, that I would do anything for, anything, was better off without me in her life. My daughter was upstairs having a nap with my wife, and I had locked myself into the kitchen, and in a fit of depression and despair and self-loathing, and in floods of tears, was going to take my life. And the second, literally within seconds of doing what I was doing, and I won't go into the details, my daughter woke up and cried. It was like divine intervention or something. I put down what I had in my hands and I went upstairs and I cuddled her and I promised her I would never leave her, and I made that promise, and I plan to stick to that promise. I knew I needed help. I knew that I'd made this promise, and one thing, if I make a promise, I stick to it to the best of my ability, because that's the kind of guy I am. I'd made this promise to my daughter, so there's no way I'm letting myself get back here again. Now, I was later diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, which was mad to me after seeing a counsellor to be told that. I'm like, but I wasn't in the fucking army. You know what I mean? Something like that can be brought on through a traumatic episode that has such a detrimental effect on your mind. I nearly lost my wife and my daughter in the same night, and I described it to everyone as the best and worst night of my life, all wrapped into one. And I only focused on the fact that I had a daughter, so how can I feel bad about it? Rather than actually saying, I love my daughter, but shit, that was shit. And actually processing it and trying to deal with it. Now I knew I needed help. I knew I was determined to fight through each day. I'd made that promise, so, but we all need help. And to me, I felt like asking for help was a sign of weakness. I, from having done it myself, know that actually trying to get that help, asking for the help, reaching out, is one of the hardest things I've ever done. And it wasn't a sign of weakness. It took real bollocks on my behalf to do it. And that is why I can be so open and talk about something that clearly still affects me nearly 10 years on. Because I don't want people to feel that hiding it is the right thing to do. It's the manly thing to do, the macho thing to do. And being honest means you're a bit of a pussy. No, actually being honest is so fucking hard. I knew I needed help. I didn't know where to go for help. I didn't know what to do. I just knew I had to get through each day, keep that promise to my daughter. I'm a man of my word. I'm a lot of things, but I'm not a liar. I had to keep that promise. Now, I was in the kitchen, the same kitchen where I nearly ended my life. Tea needed cooking, bottles needed doing, things like that. My wife had gone up, taken our daughter up for a nap, and it was almost like, I look back, it's almost like it went full circle. The 2 times I remember being in the kitchen while they were upstairs having a nap in the house we were in, the First time, I nearly took my life. The second time, I was cooking something, and I come into the lounge, I thought, it's like Blackpool Blood and Eliminations in here. She left all the lights on. She left the telly on. Like, no one's in here. What is this on the telly? Local news. What are these blokes talking about? Blokes who just seem like normal blokes. I had something in the oven. I had 5 minutes. So I thought I'd give it a watch, see what they're chatting about. I recognised where they were. It was local. Talking about this club. A man's club. What's this shit about? When men don't try and hide their stuff. Know that actually talking is bloody hard, and getting that help you need does not make you a pussy. It means it takes real bollocks to go and do it and come and give it a go. This group is Andy's Man Club. I've spoken about them on a previous episode. Not a paid promotion. I do not work for them or anything like that. I just props where props due. I saw these guys talking about it. What's this group about? Meet up on a Monday night. These guys are talking. Yeah, meet up on a Monday. Come and have a coffee. Pass a football round. Couple of questions. And if you want to talk, talk. And if you don't want to talk, have a listen. No one's going to force you to say no. I thought, do you know what? That sounds interesting. Like, it intrigued me. It spiked my interest. I missed the start of it, so I didn't know. I didn't know when it was, what time, how much it was, things like that. So I got in contact with them and sent them an email to the head office, just say, like, what is the crack? I only caught the end of it. How much is it? When is it? So every Monday, 7 p.m, 2 hours, except for bank holidays. And it costs you bugger all. All it cost you was 2 hours. All you got to lose. That was my thought. Except I then had to speak to my wife and say that, I've seen a support group. I don't want to go to something like that. Don't want to admit to it because it's embarrassing. I spoke to my wife and she went, yes, I've seen them on the news. I was hoping you would approach me because if she'd have approached me about it, I'd have told her to bugger off. I had to find it. I had to come across it. And it's like I said, I was in the kitchen, daughter upstairs having a nap with my wife, nearly took my life. Then I was in the kitchen, daughter upstairs having a nap, and I found something that helped to save my life. Full circle. I've been going there for 7 years now. I know the power of talking. I know how difficult it is. I know how isolating depression can feel. I still live with depression, it comes back and it bites you on the fucking ass. I do know that if you bottle that shit up, it doesn't go anywhere. It's still there. It's just going to get worse. It's going to fester. Actually having those conversations, having that outlet, that place to talk, whether it's a group like Andy's Man Club or another group. There's lots of groups out there. Have a Google online. Find your closest one. Whether it's ringing Samaritans, going on Mind website, speaking to your doctor, family member, friend, whatever it is. The one thing I've learned above all else, 2 things. 1, there's more people experiencing this than you know of because people are very good at hiding it. And 2, talking about it. A problem shared is a problem halved. It's true. Actually talking about it, and it can be very raw and painful talking about it. But sometimes you have to rip that plaster off for it to heal. My biggest advice is don't feel you have to go through this shit by yourself. You have to find the help for yourself. You have to take those steps. And those steps are some of the hardest steps you will ever take. But it can change your life. It can save your life. and it can change the lives of people you care about. And I'm still in my daughter's life because I learned to talk, and I learned that it is my shit, but there's people out there that care, that will help me too. I have 2 daughters, 2 additional daughters who would not even be here, would not even exist without me taking those steps, getting the help, and people there willing to help me. It's not a quick fix. It's not an overnight thing, and you will continue to have ups and downs. My ups are far more frequent, my downs are less severe, and long may that continue. So talk. Don't let depression beat you. I'm learning to live with depression. I don't know if I'll ever fully be over it, but I know this. It's not going to be me. So I'm going to wrap it up there. Apologies for talking about myself for an hour. I hope it's been helpful, and just that message of talk. If you think that could help someone, tell that person, share this video. Mean the world to me if you subscribed. I genuinely would, and hit the notification bell. Hit me a comment down below. Like the damn video. Until next time, I'll see you later.